Hello viewers, welcome back to my channel. Today we'll focus on a special heterocrine gland, pancreas. This is in continuation with a playlist of the endocrine system. Pancreas, in this image shown in a little orangish to pink color, is a leaf-shaped gland located in the upper part of the abdomen. Coming to its exact location, it lies along the duodenum, just behind the stomach and in front of the spine. This gland is also surrounded by the gallbladder, liver, as well as the spleen on the other side. And here you can see the gland being shown all around, which is a long gland measuring about 6 inches or 15 centimeters by length, and approximately it is around 2 inches in width. This gland, whose lobulated structures divided into 3 parts. One, the head part, followed by a body and then a tail. This head part generally sits on the right side of the body. Now let's see, this gland is, as I said in the opening image, it is a heterocrine gland or a mixocrine gland. Why do we call it so? This is a gland who not only has an exocrine part but also possess an endocrine part. The exocrine part is enzyme secretory with lots of ducts passing through them, and the cells you can see, these cells are called acini cells, and they pour their secretion via these ducts. That is enzyme secretory part of the gland. But that is not to focus right for this topic. Our focus will be on the pancreatic islets, that is the blue dotted island-like structures scattered throughout this gland are the hormone secretory parts of this gland. What are these cells who secrete hormone in the pancreatic islets? They are, as you can see in the diagram, the alpha cells present in the islets of Langerhans, the beta cells also present here, and then we have another 3 kinds of cells, that is the delta cells, the gamma cells and the PP cells, which are also otherwise called epsilon and the upsilon, those cells. On the top left is a morphological view of the pancreas, but towards the right you can see the inner histological and anatomical structure of this gland. Our focus is on the islets of Langerhans, and beyond that we do have the surrounding cells who are not hormone secretory. So let's see what are the kinds of cells in the islets of Langerhans. We have the deep blue colored alpha cells, we have the light blue colored beta cells, and we do have little purplish colored delta cells. These 3 are very important cells, but beyond that we also have the epsilon cells and the pancreatic polypeptide cells, scattered within the pancreas. Let's see here again in another diagram where the focus has been on these cells, and as we know, the secretions that they produce, alpha cells produce glucagon, the beta cells that secrete insulin, the most important endocrine secretion from this gland, the delta cells that secrete somatostatin, not in a very big percentage, but only around 5, a little more than that is the secretion from the delta cells. The rest is from the cells which are along the GI tract. Then we have the F cells or the gamma cells that secrete the pancreatic polypeptide. Now, this is a slide through the anatomical structure of the pancreas. Here, it is showing a connective tissue capsule, which is a protective layer for the islets of Langerhans to keep the cells protected for the secretory function. On this side, you can see some erythrocytic cells or the blood vessels. Those are the suppliers of blood for this gland, since all endocrine hormonal secretions always pass directly through blood. Now with this image, I would be explaining the proper functioning of the hormones from pancreas. Pancreas maintains the blood glucose level. The normal glucose level in the blood is between 70 to 110 milligram per deciliter. Let's take an average, it's 90 milligram per deciliter. If this glucose level starts shooting up, which can be a case just after your meals, because most of your meals are rich in carbohydrates. The staple portion is usually carbohydrates, and these carbohydrates upon digestion get converted to glucose and they come into circulation. Now, what will the pancreas do? It will activate the beta cells to produce more of insulin, and that insulin will go via the splenic artery and reach all cells where glucose has been in greater proportion. That has to be brought back to the normal range, and for this it will be a three-way approach. First, by triggering the body cells to utilize more of glucose through cellular respiration, a case which happens when you are doing a lot of physical exercises. You are spending in a lot of ATP, which is coming in return of the glucose, which is getting broken down by respiration. The next is by, inducing the process of conversion of glucose into glycogen. This glucose getting converted into glycogen, which is an insoluble form, is easy to get it stored in the liver. And by storing that extra glucose from circulation in the glycogen form, it brings back the glucose level to normal. Or the third, by inhibiting gluconeogenesis. That is, there are chances that the other nutrients other than carbohydrate like amino acids and the glycerol could be converted back to glucose if the glucose is not in the required amount. But this process will be indeed stopped when glucose is already higher in circulation. So no gluconeogenesis is also a way of maintaining the normal glucose level in the blood. Now let's see an opposite condition where the blood glucose level itself is lower than the required normal. In such a case, the person will feel very weak, not have enough energy to produce ATP via oxidation. So the body needs proper amount of glucose to get energy for all metabolic activities. And in this case, for bringing the blood glucose level to normal, what will happen? There will be another cell called the alpha cell who will get more activated. And the function of this alpha cell is to convert the glycogen back to glucose. So once the alpha cells start producing, glucagon, this glucagon will indeed inhibit the body cells for utilizing any extra amount of glucose so that the glucose level doesn't fall down in the blood circulation. The second is by stimulating, glycogenolysis. So the glycogen, which is already stored in the liver, will now be returned back into circulation in the form of glucose so as to maintain the normal glucose level. Or the third way in which it can stimulate and bring about the normal level of glucose is by stimulating gluconeogenesis. That is, the nutrients other than glucose, that is amino acids or glycerol, they can be converted back to glucose, and thus that can also bring about a normal glucose level in the blood. As long as these are possible by the two hormones called the insulin and the glucagon, the steady level of the blood with the sugar is maintained. Otherwise, there is also somatostatin which can try to balance, but for that the balancing is a little critical way in which it has to do, because this is not only produced by pancreas, that happens through the GI tract and other cells as well. Here is a case when the body is not able to, maintain the normal glucose level. Then we say we come across disorders due to the insufficient or excessive secretion of the hormones. Now, in case of insufficient secretion of insulin, this leads to diabetes mellitus. Mellitus is honey. That is the way of saying that the blood becomes sweet like honey. Indeed, it is not that sweet it becomes, but truly the blood glucose level goes higher than 70 to 110 milligram per deciliter. And if that prolongs for a time, that is a condition of a diabetes mellitus. Now, the body may try to throw out that excess glucose through the urine, but if it is happening very frequently, indeed it is a case of diabetes mellitus. Now, in what different ways can we really understand that the person is suffering from this disorder? When the function of the pancreas is normal or the pancreas is absolutely healthy, the insulin which is produced will be accepted by the insulin receptors on the cell, and they will be able to utilize the glucose and thus maintain the normal glucose level. But in type 1 diabetes, the insulin production will be inhibited. So there is no case of the receptor getting the insulin so as to balance the amount of glucose in the blood. That's why there will be all the glucose which is produced will be in circulation, leading to a higher level of glucose in the blood called diabetes mellitus. There is another type 2 diabetes where the insulin may be produced, but then those insulin molecules will not have a receptor responding to it properly. So, when they do not respond to the insulin, in that case, the utilization of glucose is not possible. That is a case of diabetes type 2. Now, let's see here on this image the summary of the maintenance for the normal blood sugar level has been shown via the beta cells of the insulin and the alpha cells of the glucagon. In case both of these cells are operating at their best, yet they are not able to completely establish the equilibrium and the normalcy. Then the other cells come into action from the intestinal tract, that is the GIP and the GLP-1. These are the cells from the gastrointestinal tracts who increase the insulin secretion through the L cells and the K cells found there. In that case, the somatostatin will also come into action to inhibit insulin and glucagon secretion, thereby trying to establish a normal glucose level finally via the delta cells. So this is where we usually come to the end of an understanding how glucose level is maintained in the body via insulin and glucagon basically. But there is an intervention of somatostatin via the delta cells too, which is definitely not a work of the pancreas alone. It comes along with the intestines or GI tract operating along with it. This is a summarized view of the hormones produced by pancreas and the regulation of glucose level in the blood via the alpha cells producing glucagon, the beta cells producing insulin, the delta cells producing somatostatin, and the pancreatic polypeptide cells activating the pancreas. Thank you. Thank you for watching. Please do like my video, share it with your friends if they find it useful, and do not forget to subscribe to my channel if you still haven't done it. Happy learning!